Hey, what to do, y'all? What to do? What to do? What to do? So, I've talked about finding a real wife many times before. So, for those that are familiar with my content, you've known that I've talked about finding a real wife many times. I have it in many different volumes, and I'll actually put volume one in the comment section for those checking this out on the replay. So, pretty sure one wanted to hear about finding a real husband. What is that like? Because I talked about what it means to find a real wife. Finding a real husband is, yeah, it's a little, it's more so um, for a woman, it's more so when the opportunity presents itself to you. When a man literally presents himself to you that he likes you. Like it's really simple. It's not really that complicated. But nowadays, approaching doesn't seem like the best idea. We have these online dating apps that don't make it any better for a gal to find a real husband, to be honest, but that's what's out here. But in context, I can at least offer some insight to what a real husband actually is, because this is not talked about at all. Husbandry. Yes, I said the word husbandry. So for all you farmers out there listening to this video, y'all know what I'm talking about. Because that does tie in with what a real husband is too. Basically, husbandry is all about cultivation, whether it's livestock or crops. That's what husbandry is. It's simply about cultivation. And so being a husband is no different. The way he has to cultivate someone that is his wife, the way she's supposed to be. But the reason why that this does become successful, or the reason why it should be successful in a marriage, is due to her willingness to be cultivated, just like nature intended it, right? Because let's say if the crop wasn't even farm raised, but yet in this natural element of how you harvest the crop in the jungle somewhere or something like that, right? You still have to cultivate that particular plant by making sure that it's in the right environment, or at least you kind of know the rate at which that plant will grow, or those animals will continue to thrive based on the environment. So this is a part of husbandry. So when a man is cultivating a woman, it's the same way. And so that fellas, be thoughtful of who you want to cultivate. Forget just you need to think about who you want to be with and who you want to marry. No, you need to think about who you want to cultivate. She has to be willing to be cultivated. And you'll know over time, but you don't take the next step with her until you see her level of willingness improve and increase. Okay? That's the way you'll know that she is someone that you can be a husband for, right? That you can be a husband for. Because, see, the beauty of something that's being cultivated, you're going to reap the harvest of that. There should be no issue with him reaping the harvest from his wife and of his wife. If you understand what being a husband is and what husbandry overall is about. Because in essence, femininity is about being cultivated. A man is not cultivated. A man is the cultivator. He's the gardener. Does he have to learn about cultivating? Yes, he does. But a man is not cultivated. A woman is cultivated. Yeah, being a husband ties back to husbandry. It does. And once a guy understands that, him having a wife becomes a little bit clearer as to the way she needs to be towards him, especially as a wife. She has to be willing to be cultivated. Basically, being made a certain way, being molded for him. That's part of the cultivation, the way a man has to prune the leaves and the branches of a tree or the bush to make sure that it's growing right, that it's going to be ripe, okay? That she's ripe, that she's not rotting, that you don't spoil her rotting, okay? So, uh, but that's the thing. Husbandry is about, it ties back to the husband. It ties back to a woman needing to be cultivated. If she's not trying to be cultivated, she's just like a rotten fruit, you know? So that's really what I'm trying to say in regards to a woman finding a real husband. Is really a man that presents himself to you. Yes, he presents himself to you. And he wants to literally cultivate you into this reaping of the harvest. And what is this harvest? What is this reaping of the harvest? What is this all about? Even more of her femininity blossoming. This idea that when a gal is glowing, that's actually her just being ripe. You know what I'm saying? That's her being ripe. That's really what that glow is. Just like that fruit or that plant per se, when it's glowing in the sun, that's literally it being ripe. And so that means that she was tended to, taken care of. Her willingness for it, though, that's what's key. Because she can say he wasn't tending to me and he wasn't taking care of me. But the question is, were you willing to have him do that? Okay, like truly willing, not based on your idea of how he takes care of you, but him taking care of you. Did you let him do that? Were you willing to let him do that? You know, because there's a process, there's things that he has to do to take care of you, you know, a certain way, just like with a plant. Now, the problem is you have, just like with a lot of GMO plants, there seems to be a lot of fast forward ways, per se, a lot of uh, hyper uh, what I would call hyper botanical or hyper biological ways you can grow plants nowadays to where they could be in full bloom early. See, I think a lot of gals, they have that in mind for a lot of their connections with guys. They want that hyper botanical, hyper biological tending to spoil them and all this stuff, like over the top everything. But all that does is make you rotten. Okay. So that actually starts to take away from what him being a husband is about and what husbandry is about. So getting off to the livestock aspect, back to the farming, like you don't do this even with animals, like the way you tend to animals. You don't do that either from the standpoint of just this hyper growth with things. Hypergamy. Yes, I threw that in there. So yes, a man ain't trying to deal with a gal that's spoiled rotten. No. Uh this is really a lot of things that's being overlooked because I think that's why a lot of our connections, this is definitely why a lot of our connections are not going so far these days because uh a man in essence, he's not able to fully be a true husband from the standpoint of husbandry that some people might take with a grain of salt and think I'm just talking off the side of my head, even though this all is connected. Everything that I'm saying is connected. But that's why he's not able to fully be a husband because he's not able to actually practice true husbandry with this gal. Part of what I call grow to know instead of get to know. Grow to know, grow is part of cultivation, right? So that's the thing. Like, you know, this is important because we have to get to the point of where it goes back to cultivation with a lot of our connections. And so, ladies, when you're seeking a man that is wanting to be your husband, see, that's the thing. You have to not go into this being like, oh, I'm gonna make sure I find a guy that is a husband. Like, no, he has to want to be. You have to know that he really wants to be, and not based on what you think that he wants to be. this is like I said, a lot of this stuff is overlooked, and uh, I feel like personally, like with what finding a real wife is, because I've talked about this before, and I'll wrap it up here. Per se, I'll just end the video here. Um, a lot of the feminine, not all, of course, not all, but with a lot of the feminine, they don't want to really be cultivated. So in many ways, they don't want to be wifed, or they don't want to be ripe. Therefore, they don't want to be right. I feel like personally, that's what's going on. That's where we see a lot of this disconnect. And then you have, they got the statement of practice what you preach. But you have some people out here that don't preach what they practice. You see, you do have some people that call themselves married. You do have some females that call themselves married, but they don't preach what they practice, right? They still speak in the undertone that's against the connection of the way a man and a woman is supposed to be, or they don't talk about the way they are with the guy that they're with, maybe because she's the one that wears the pants in that situation. I understand about not really just practicing what I preach, but live it out, not just talking about it, you know. So I think that's what's missing, though, that connection of what a woman should know a real husband is about. He's about cultivating her. That's basically why a lot of things in this world are the way they are nowadays, is simply because we living in just times that we just don't see things play out the way they should regarding nature, regarding love, regarding everything. Because things are not set practice the way they should be amongst each other. Finding a real husband, ladies, is really about a man that's willing to cultivate you. But you have to be willing to accept his cultivation of you. And until you do that, that's why you're going to struggle with having somebody in your life. Even if you are already with somebody, but you're giving him a hard time because you're not really growing with him. You're not growing with him, even though he's trying to show you how things can grow. And really, at the end of the day, if you just don't desire to grow with him, don't go with him. But I'd say, fellas, you just, with anything you're trying to grow, with anything you're trying to tend to, you have to know at a certain time, there's just not going to be anything more of it. And I think at the end of the day, that's where we're sitting at with a lot of our conversations online. And a lot of it just simply comes down to, you know, we talk about how things are by design, but we're living in a way that's not by design, if that makes sense to some. Thanks a million.